My name is Tracy Ozer, and this is my podcast, Journey Through Your Suicide Loss. My mission is to share my story of how I've processed my own grief after the loss of my daughter to suicide. We'll delve into the hard survival questions and how they affected me. Hopefully, my story can help you through your own grief journey. Please take some time for yourself and join me. Hello, my name is Tracy Ozer, and thank you for joining me on my podcast, Journey Through Your Suicide Loss, which is brought to you by Journey Through Grief. Journey Through Grief, which is spelled THRU, is a platform to help people grieving a suicide loss and for advocating to others about what it's like to lose someone to suicide. I am asked all the time about how I've done this. How have I lost a child in a most horrific way and am still able to get out of bed every day and function? So I started this podcast for the survivors, the people who get up every day as well, the ones who are warriors without even realizing it. Today I'm talking about the relationships that are damaged due to suicide loss. I will address the pain and heartbreak that comes from the avoidance and the people who disappear from our lives. This at a time when we need people to lean on the most. When we return from this short break, I'll share my own story with you of how I was affected by this and what a loss survivor needs from people during this tragic time. Welcome back. In case you haven't heard of me, my name is Tracy Ozer, and I live in Spokane Valley, Washington. Prior to my current marriage, I was a single mom for many years and was raising 2 children. In December of 2006, my world turned upside down when my 16-year-old daughter ended her own life by personal choice. As I've said in prior episodes, this podcast isn't designed to be graphic. It's to tell the story of how I have journeyed through the process of my own grief. As I go through this podcast series, I will only get more in depth about the night she died as it's necessary. If you like our podcast, please indicate by clicking the like button or give us a rating. Or if you have time, leave a comment. Those comments help us know what you're struggling with so that I can address that in future episodes. You're also welcome to leave a comment or review over on our Journey Through Grief website or Facebook page. We can be found at www.journeythroughgrief, that's journey, THRU, grief.com, or our Facebook page is also Journey Through Grief. Thank you for your support. Most importantly, if you are struggling with thoughts of suicide yourself, you can reach help at 1-800-273-8255 or text the word HOME, HOME, to 741-741, and someone will be available to listen. Like I said before, today I'm talking about the relationships that are damaged by suicide loss after friends and family walk away from the loss survivor because of the suicide. But first, I want to say that I think people are inherently good and do mean well most of the time. I think the issue is more due to education, and lack thereof, of what suicide loss survivors need. And also, we need to end the stigma that somehow it's not okay to talk to us. Secondly, there is also the chance that my own family and friends will listen to this podcast at some point. My goal here isn't to hurt any of their feelings because I know they love me, and I'm not looking for any explanations or apologies. But part of the reason that this behavior continues to happen is because no one talks about it. So let's do it. In December 2006, I lost my 16-year-old daughter to suicide. It didn't take long for word to get out among her friends, and their text messages were rampant. Upon the news reaching my own friends and family, my phone was ringing off the hook. I think some friends, who were really more like acquaintances or just knew of my daughter, were reaching out more for the play-by-play of the events than to really show support. Over the course of the week, people checked in, gave their condolences, and offered to help me with anything I might need. But did they really want to help me? Or is that just what you're supposed to say? I don't know what I needed. I was just trying to process the basics of getting out of bed, making decisions about caskets, burial plots, whether to have a memorial, what pastor to have at her burial service, etc. These weren't things that people could do for me or help me with. Throughout the week, my boyfriend stayed at my side. At one point, I remember just handing him my phone and putting him in charge of it. I had some friends come to my house and check on me and bring me some food, which was nice, but they didn't stay long, as I'm sure they were uncomfortable. My close family traveled into town so that they could attend the funeral service, but by that point, I was just numb to everything. 5 days after Chelsea died, we had the memorial service for her. I wanted to do this because she had so many friends, and I knew they were hurting too. I was humbled to arrive at the mortuary and be told that more than 300 people were there. In fact, there were so many people trying to enter the parking lot and wait to park that the line of cars was backed up onto the highway off-ramp. I saw people that I hadn't seen in years. I saw her elementary school principal, and I saw people I had worked with decades ago. One of her high school teachers was visibly upset as she stood up and read a story that Chelsea had written for an assignment for her class. There were distraught teenage girls who had been dropped off for this, and I just didn't have the energy to console them. As a side note, don't drop your kids off at a memorial service like you're dropping them off at the mall and just planning to pick them up later. I felt so bad for those girls. So in my grief, I could recognize that Chelsea had obviously touched a lot of people far and wide. 2 days later, I buried my baby, and then the isolation started. Family went back home, and my boyfriend had to go home and go back to school. A week after Chelsea died, I had to go back to work. I hadn't purchased enough life insurance to sustain my grieving process. The bills needed paid. Shortly after that, I received a greeting card in the mail from my boss. I guessed that she had mailed it because she didn't want to hand it to me and have me read it in front of her. She basically said she was giving me the card weeks after the funeral because I was going to find out that over time, people would move on and forget about Chelsea. They would move on with their own lives and forget about the pain of mine. Over time, I would find this to be true. Since Chelsea died at the beginning of December, the holiday season was in full swing. I didn't decorate that year, and I didn't care. It was enough just for me to get out of bed and go to work. Everyone around me was happy and celebrating, and I could care less. My son was staying with his dad, so I just took solace in the fact that the Christmas decorations were happening at that house, and I was off the hook for all of it. But a few years later, when I was looking back on that time, I also realized that I had received 0 Christmas cards that year. I assumed that people just felt they should leave me alone and not remind me that I had just lost my kid. I assumed that people didn't want to show off that they were happy when they knew I couldn't be. On the one hand, receiving Christmas cards didn't matter to me. But on the other hand, I wasn't given the choice of throwing a holiday card away because I was in pain. People made that choice for me and just avoided me altogether. As it kept happening over the years, that avoidance just started feeling normal. 6 months after Chelsea died, I moved 2,000 miles away to Las Vegas. Obviously, when her birthday came around in August, I couldn't be upset if my friends couldn't find me and to see if I was all right. But my family knew where I was, and the only one who called me was my sister. In October 2007, I joined Facebook, and I found my friends from back home. They mostly asked how I liked living in a busy, entertainment-filled town. They wanted to know if all the hype was true and whether we'd seen any of the big shows. And of course, they shared things about their lives and their families, but no one ever asked about Chelsea or how I was feeling. Since my boyfriend had moved with me, he would field questions here and there of, "So, how is Tracy doing?" But no one wanted to address me directly. On the first anniversary of Chelsea's death, my new boss found out about Chelsea because I thought I could go back to work and hide my emotions from everyone there. Not only was I wrong, but I had to leave and go home after crying in my boss's office about this daughter that she didn't know I had. Again, my sister called to see if I was all right. I don't think we received any Christmas cards that year either, although I really didn't care because I was struggling with the emotional trauma of whether I wanted to put up a Christmas tree. I watched the Facebook posts of my friends celebrating a holiday season, but no one asked if I was okay. It was just sad. When you're in the middle of grief, time stands still. With a suicide death, there's a lot of guilt and a lot of unanswered questions. As I was trying to process the thoughts of, if I would have talked to Chelsea differently, would she still be here? Or had I moved her to a different environment, would she have died? There was also the thoughts of, I must be a bad mother because everyone who said they were my friends don't talk to me anymore. If I'm still sad after a year, they must not want to associate with me because I will just bring sadness to everyone's festivities. These thoughts just perpetuated the feelings of grief, of how my world turned upside down and I can't change it. Fortunately, I found other people who had lost a loved one to suicide. I attended support group meetings twice per month and would listen to the other survivors who missed talking to their friends and family, just like I did, and how they didn't understand why people either walked away entirely or shut them down if the survivor brought up their loved one's name. While there is a lot of solace in finding people who resonate with your feelings, watching their heartbreak of losing more relationships than just of their person who died by suicide is truly sad. Over time, I've realized that, truthfully, people are just busy, and that I don't need to take it personally. This has nothing to do with Chelsea, or me, or the suicide. This is just life. But what if things were different? What if, as suicide loss survivors, we just communicated to the world, I know you're busy, but I need you to check in on me either every few days or at a minimum on the days surrounding death anniversaries, birthdays, and holidays. What if we just said, I know you don't want to upset me, so you don't reach out, but I live with this reality every day, and when you don't reach out, I think you don't love me anymore, or that my loved one really didn't matter. It's time that people know that yes, asking about our loved one could make us cry. But guess what? We need to cry. And we're more happy that you asked about how we're doing or asking if there's a funny memory that we want to share. Now, we're not all created equally, and grief can come with a lot of anger. There will be the loss survivors who get mad when they're asked about the person who died. They may feel like the only reason they're being asked is because all you want to hear about is the gory details again. Or loss survivors will get mad thinking, oh, now you're asking. Where were you the past umpteen years when you never talked about them? Again, asking how we're doing and then respecting our answer is the most appropriate. This preserves long-term relationships. A few years ago, I wrote a Facebook post about this. I had my best friend reach out and say to me that she was really sorry that she hadn't reached out over the years to ask about how I was doing. Even though she'd known Chelsea since birth, she didn't want to upset me by talking about her. She said that honestly, she didn't know what she should say, so it was easier just not to say anything at all. I accepted her apology and we moved on. I did educate her, though, that someone not talking about Chelsea meant that she was forgotten, which was really more hurtful. In fact, every year when Chelsea's birthday and death anniversary comes up, I will put a post on Facebook about it. And it's not because I am necessarily honoring those days, because I think about them all the time. It's because I want to remind people that she existed and see how many people will acknowledge. And maybe that's really just a twisted way to measure her value to the people who say they were her friends and mine. But now that I've moved through almost 14 years of this, here's the bottom line. We're going through so much with this suicide loss. People just don't know what to do with us. And there is the stigma due to the belief systems like suicide is bad, and the stigma due to religious beliefs such as suicide is a sin. Family disagreements about how things should be disclosed because there can be embarrassment over the type of death. Grief can also be called separation distress. We're already in the distress of losing our loved ones. The isolation in our grief makes it worse. It's not right, but it's unfortunately the way it is. If you're new to your loss, it's okay to ask your friends not to avoid you. If they are already avoiding you, it's okay to ask them why they are. If they respond with something hurtful, remind yourself that this is how they are choosing to deal with this situation, and it might be something you just have to sit with for the time being. Then you can take your own quiet time to assess whether this relationship benefits you or if it will benefit you in the future. Maybe you walk away from that person for a little while and then revisit what you need from them at a later time. In the show notes for this podcast, I have included a link to a worksheet that you can download and write your thoughts about what you would want to say to people. And then whether you share that with them is up to you. I hope it's helpful. If you need help with it, reach out to me through any of my social media channels. Thanks for listening, and please come back and check in for new episodes. We will continue to release more podcasts because there are suicide deaths every day, and the average number of people left behind from one death is 135. That's a lot of pain and a lot of people hiding in that pain because of the stigma surrounding suicide. If, as a society, we continue with the status quo and don't step forward as survivors to say what we're going through, things won't change. The stigma won't change, and help will remain unavailable. If I need to be the voice to get that started, then that's okay. I'm here for it. You will help our podcast by sharing it. Please share to help others. And again, please visit our website at www.journeythroughgrief.com. I welcome comments, questions, or let me know if there's a topic that you would like me to talk about. I will be happy to share my own personal journey. You can also leave comments on our Journey Through Grief Facebook page. Additionally, if you are listening to this podcast through the Anchor platform, you can be a monthly contributor to our cause by clicking the support button on the Anchor dashboard. This allows us to provide materials and educational information to those who need to hear it. Thank you for spending your time with me, and take care until next time.